Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show. Excited to have you on here in the post 4th of July show that we've got for you today. Huge show as well. We're going to be joined by Mitchell Melton, Buckeye defensive end, rush. Started out at linebacker, had kind of a meandering journey, Joshua, through his time at Ohio State, but I expect big things from him this year. Very, very excited to ultimately see what he does. Got some other big things. Athletic departments, they released the list of budgets, who's making in the most money, who's bringing in the most in revenue, who's bringing in the most in ticket revenue, and maybe some surprises at the top here. And then we have questions from our listeners, our tailgate talk, which we love. We got some good ones coming in today as we are within a month of the first college football game, I believe, that is maybe not a month, about 6 weeks that is going to be played. So very, very excited for that as well. But want to open up with this, Josh, as we start talking about coaches and how important coaches are in the world of college football. And if you look at it right now, and this is just a tweet that I saw, it kind of fired up the other day, with Nick Saban being gone, Pete Carroll's gone, Urban Meyer gone, Jim Tressel gone, Jimbo Fisher gone, Ed Orgeron gone, Stoops is gone, Spurrier gone, Lloyd Carr gone, Frank Beamer, Les Miles, Bill Snyder, Chris Peterson, David Shaw, all of the coaches that, when I was younger growing up, played for some of these guys. I know that you probably watched. These guys are all done now. And if you start looking around the landscape of college football, there's a handful of older guys, but it's pretty much, Joshua, been dominated by younger coaches.
And one of the interesting things too is, when Nick Saban retired, everybody started doing let's see who owns a championship right now in college football. You got Mac Brown. That seems like it was forever ago. You've got Dabo, and I think the bloom is off the rose there. And then you've got Kirby Smart, who I think we all believe can, build something dynastic in terms of a timeline at Georgia. But you went through the list there. You got a bunch of guys who won championships, had really good programs, sustained success. And even though it's a little bit of a younger man's game right now, and I think we're excited about some of the coaches, it's largely unproven in terms of the ability to win a championship. And I think that's the thing that I'm excited about because it does feel a little bit more open there. And of course, you got the brands who you feel like can compete. But in terms of coaches, you really ask yourself the question, who's the guy, maybe outside of Kirby, that's going to be able to build the thing?
Yeah, it's a huge question. And the most recent national championship coach, Jim Harbaugh, left Michigan to go to the NFL. And so as you sit here and look at it, it's Kirby Smart and it's really Dabo Swinney. Mac Brown won a national championship when I was in college. So, and that was at a previous school. And so I guess you have to say, I'd say Ryan Day is in that mix coming up. Do you put James Franklin in there? He's been around it. He's not exactly a young guy. I think if you start looking around, Kalen DeBoer, can he reproduce a little bit at Alabama or keep going what Nick Saban had? And so there's just some interesting pieces there with some of these new young and up and coming guys. And then also, if you look out at Oregon and what they're doing out there, there's another place where you've got a young coach coming in from the SEC and seeing if he can kind of put a stamp on it. But a lot of these guys have been close, but none of them have actually won the crown, which I think kind of speaks to, hey, there is something to that veteran leadership and understanding and the experience of being in those games and winning big games.
Well, another guy too who's in that conversation, I think a lot of people, I look at their schedule and I say that it's, bare minimum 10 wins, but Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, right? And people think that they're a preseason top 5 team. They think that they're going to be able to have a lot of success this year. And when you go with Marcus and you name Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, obviously young guys, these are all guys who are at their first job as head coach too. And I think that there's a learning curve that comes along with that. Now, Kirby was there and he did a similar thing, but I think people forget the beginning years of Kirby. Certainly there were some high notes, but it was kind of like, is Georgia ever going to get over the hump until they finally did it? It's all fun. It gives us a lot to speculate about.
I think the other piece of it, you look at some of these coaches and there's a handful of old guys that are still in places that have had success. You look at Mike Gundy with what he's done at Oklahoma State and the run they've been on. And, people can kind of pick at him and, the I'm a man, I'm 40, that was like 20 some years ago almost that happened. He's almost 60 now as you look at it. Kirk Ferentz with what he's done at Iowa. um, Whittingham out at Utah. And
Yep.
interesting with them, they just named, a coach in waiting, essentially a successor there. I believe their defensive coordinator is going to be taken over. Dabo's been at Clemson now for 15 plus years. But like that's kind of the list of guys who have been in contention, top 10 coaches that have been at their programs for 15 plus years.
Well, the one guy that you mentioned a little bit earlier on the who can do it thing, James Franklin, he's been at Penn State for over a decade now.
Yeah.
Like I played against Penn State teams that James Franklin coached. And it doesn't necessarily feel like it's been that long. But I think we should also appreciate to that point, like Kirk Ferentz, what he's done. I'm not exactly sure anybody else gets to do similar to Whittingham and Gundy, but like making it a decade at a big program, I think it's something that's going to be uncommon as we look here toward the future, whether it's burnout. I think some of these athletic departments are just willing to pay to get whoever they want. And then the other part I think about too is these guys are getting rich. Like somebody's just gonna come up and be like, I've made enough money. I just want to enjoy my time. Like I'm not necessarily burnt out. I just don't need to do this anymore. And that's what intrigues me.
Well, and you look at some of the guys, and that's the point that I was hoping to get to here. Nick Saban, coach for 28 seasons, the head coach. Bill Snyder, 27. Steve Spurrier, 26. And, he had a couple years in the NFL in there as well. Frank Beamer, 29 at Virginia Tech. I just don't see anybody lasting. I mean, I think 15 years is probably about the life expectancy. And that's even, you talk about, Dan Lanning at Oregon, Ryan Day at Ohio State. We'll see how Kalen DeBoer does down at Alabama, because either A, you're probably not winning enough and they're going to put the heat on you, or B, the fact that, like you said, these guys make a lot of money. And with what they're expected to do now, I mean, there's essentially coach and general manager, which you always kind of were in college football. But now you actually have general manager style problems with NIL, player transfer portal, and everything else that's out there. It just doesn't seem like it's a sustainable lifestyle for these guys and something that they're going to want to do for very long.
I'm gonna tell you this too, and it's a little bit unfair, but the way that you have to ask for money nowadays, like I think boosters might start getting tired of the guys after a decade too. Like, I'm tired of dealing with the guy. I'm tired of the guy calling my phone asking me for money, and it's just the nature of the beast. Like, I think if you can make it more than a decade out of school in this environment, you're probably beating the odds.
And that's the thing. Like sometimes too, Josh, was this, like fresh voices in the room carry a lot of weight, which is what is amazing with what Nick Saban was able to do for so
Yeah, man.
long, because you get stale, and you get stale not only to your players, but they're cycling through, but it's more so to the athletic department, maybe to the fan
Yep.
base, and especially the boosters. When you bring a new guy in, they can get excited and they may want to donate. But prior to that, like, you've asked me for money for the last 10 years and maybe you're winning and maybe you're not, but it kind of burns you out a little bit. All right. Up next, we're going to get a chance to talk to our guy, Mitchell Melton. I'm very excited for this. One of my favorite Buckeyes with kind of his journey. Very talented dude, suffered some injuries. We're going to talk about his journey to Ohio State here coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Get ready to see the PGA champions take on Firestone Country Club South course of the Colleague Companies Championship July 10th through 14th. Tickets start at just $25 and include access to the Colleague Infinity Zone, an interactive area featuring live music on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame stage. How about that? They're going to have food trucks, activations from LA Golf, X Golf, Horse Soldier Bourbon, and more. One ticket, two experiences. Visit collegiatechampionships.com to purchase your tickets and make it a great day. And now, pleased to welcome in my guy, Mitchell Melton here. Ohio State defensive end, started as a linebacker. Mitch, you've been here a long time. Does this feel like the first offseason you've had in quite a while where you've been able to kind of get into this, be healthy, and kind of feel like you're improving as opposed to just rehabbing?
Yeah, I think, definitely a lot of my time here has been recovering. But these last 2 years, I've definitely gotten my confidence back as a player, and it's definitely like a part of the brotherhood here at Ohio State. So definitely has been very beneficial to me and actually like giving me a lot of confidence in myself and what I can do on the field for sure. So, yeah.
We talked to Travion Henderson a little bit about his injuries, and it's something that happens to all of us. But I think it takes you to a place that you didn't necessarily want to go, and it makes you really evaluate yourself. So, going through the fire of the injuries, what are some things you learned about yourself?
I learned really, I think the biggest thing is how to handle adversity. Coming here, I had a dream, and I had expectations. I had all the things that I wanted to be as an Ohio State football player, but I realized, reality is second to none when it comes to things like that. And I definitely wanted to take what I've been through as a way or as something that I could learn from. So I think that was definitely like a way where it solidified my perspective and taught me the power of perspective in that, right? Because I could have, just like wallowed in self-pity and let these insurmountable challenges just like stop me from growing into the person I could become, or I could use that as a way of motivation as I'm doing so now. And I think it definitely taught me not only like what to do when adversity comes, but how to become stronger as a result of that. So yeah, I think it's a big part of me.
Trey mentioned that. We talked to Lathan a lot too, and he's a guy like you that has had a number of injuries, big time stuff throughout the course. And with that, you get to spend a lot of time with Adam Stewart. We call him Dr. Stu in there. I mean, I know he's one of the best physical therapists in the country, if not the best. But talk about that relationship with him, and not even sometimes you said the physical elements, but the psychological elements of going through multiple knee injuries like you did.
Yeah, definitely. Coach Stu is my guy. I think those first couple or that first injury, I really, because I didn't really know who he was. I wasn't really in the training room as much as I should be, of course. But after that, being in there every day, being in there every day, I definitely, grew a bond with him and just like we got to know each other very well. And he's one of like the funniest guys in the Woody I say. And I think it's just made it a lot easier, do the day-to-day grind and the day-to-day rehab, having someone like Stu every day just to push me and motivate me every day. So it's nice.
Yeah, he's a magician when it comes to his craft. And another guy in that building who I consider a magician as well is Coach Johnson, LJ. He's been at it for a while.
Yeah.
He's taught a lot of great players, and obviously you've got to spend some time under his tutelage. Like, what is it like working with a veteran of the industry like that?
Yeah, it's definitely there's so much you can learn from a guy like that, and he has so much experience, and he has so many players that are on to make millions and millions of dollars doing what you love. So I take every day as a learning opportunity from him, and I think we've definitely gotten a lot closer as I've gotten into the D-line room, and we both like understand like my strengths and my weaknesses and all the things that I need to like improve on. So it's just like that transparency and that willingness to grow from him has definitely helped me out a lot along the way.
So, one of the things you did, you underwent a position shift, and
Yeah.
doing that in college. Well, people act like it's easy. Like, oh yeah, we'll just move you around like it's been a mad. What has that been like? You come in playing linebacker. You're a big body guy,
Yeah.
and I mean you're built. You're very similar size to Joshua and I. And those
Hmm.
guys now, I mean, they're edge guys. And so,
Yeah.
what has that position shift been like?
Um, it was. I mean, I think in high school I played a little bit of like on a passing down situation, I'd rush the passer, and I had some success at that. So I wasn't like totally foreign to the idea of being a pass rusher, but I definitely would say like it took a little bit to like understand the run game aspect of it and like the physicality of being in the trenches because it's a lot different. I'd definitely say, but I think the biggest thing I've learned is like I can still use my strengths that I had as a linebacker and use that as like an advantage against the O line because I'm definitely quicker and I could move a little bit faster than maybe some other DNs could. But just knowing my strengths and also the things I needed to work on definitely helped a lot in that transition. So yeah.
It's funny because I underwent that change when I was playing in the league, and everything happens faster down there. You don't get to see as much when you're down there, so you definitely got to prepare. And you had mentioned some of the parts of your game that you've been working on, some of the parts that you need to work on. What are your biggest focuses this offseason in terms of your game?
Yeah, I'd definitely say knowing the playbook inside and out is probably my biggest thing because there's a lot of different nuances to the game, especially as a defensive end. A lot of different gaps and schemes that I gotta be accounted for, and I definitely would say in the spring I was getting more comfortable with that, but that could always be an improvement for me. And I say physicality, especially like in a certain run fit, would definitely help and translate into more playing time in the field and things like that.
You mentioned the spring. Did you feel like practice, at least watching it, Mitch, that there was like an increased level of competitiveness? I mean, it was like chippy back and forth and like good
Oh yeah,
spirited and fun. But man,
yeah.
it seemed like it was a battle every day between the offense and defense.
It was definitely like two sides of the ball trying to like prove themselves. I say definitely in the D line and offensive line kind of front. Like there was a lot of questions going into this year of like who would be like the catalyst for the defensive unit, and I think us in the D line we wanted to be like the leaders and the alphas of that group and like really set the tone. So every day we had that mentality and that mindset to just like prove ourselves and prove everyone else that we can be the best in the nation for sure.
Well, speaking of being the best in the nation, like what are your conversations like in terms of your process to getting there? You know, through spring, I know you guys meet, you talk about objectives, like, you know, what has that been like without giving us too much information?
It's just really focusing on the fundamentals and the techniques. And you know, I think we're a really close-knit group, so we take the time outside of like any team scheduled events like practices and anything like that. But we come in to like watch film or we like do some drills outside. It just like, you know, try to hone in on every little thing that will give us an edge when the time matters the most. So I think definitely being as like taking as much time as possible on the little things that will always translate, I think has definitely been the biggest thing for us.
So I want to talk a little bit about the weight room. I always like to ask a guy who's on here with me a lot, our guy Anthony Schlegel. You got to spend some
Yeah.
times with Coach Schlegs. I mean,
Yeah.
just give everybody I always want to hear everyone's individual take on kind of what their experiences are with him. Have you gotten to train with him? And if so, you know, how's that been?
Yeah, I've definitely had to train with him a lot this summer, and I'd
You
say
say
he's
had
probably,
to or get to?
oh, I had the pleasure. I said had the pleasure of getting to train with him. But nah, he was probably one of the best additions we could have for the summer. I mean, his energy is unmatched. Like I've never seen it before. And the way he carries himself and the way he carries himself in the weight room is something like you just like are in awe in at some points because it's like it's different. You know what I'm saying? Working out with Schlegel, like you have to get your mind right for something like that because you know it's gonna be like if anything like a gauntlet because he just like he's 100% in everything he does and it shows up in the workouts and it's a very much like it motivates me to be the best version I can be in that weight room for sure.
Yeah, I was coached by Schlegs. I was also coached by Mick. Those two guys get after you. It is totally different there. But one of the things that Mick did, we talked about this in some other episodes, is he'll change you up. He calls it forceful adaptation, where something will be completely different. You got to adapt to it and you don't have a choice. So when you look back at the workout so far, like what's been your favorite thing that you've done this summer workout wise?
I'd say a lot of like the team workouts that we've done, like it'd be like the last 3 Fridays before we had break, we did like a whole team workout where we had like we did like a workout that would normally be in the weight room. We did in the indoor field and we like had the entire team. It was like stations and it was like each team was like, they were like grouped up into 6 different groups. And it was like, it was really on the leaders, you know, to like set the tone and the standard of what the workout should be. And it felt like that accountability really is going to translate in the season because there's going to be times where like, we're going to be needed by our leaders and even the ones that are being led to like step up in the biggest moments. So I think it definitely was like, it felt like this summer was like, it was like the training for the season. Like every situation that would happen in the season was shown in the summer so that we're prepared for it and ready to go.
You know, one of the things too, and this would be the first year of this 12-team playoff, and you know, I've talked to some guys about this, and Schlegs has made a great point. He's like the teams with the depth on the offense and defensive line to be able to go through a gauntlet, you know, 15, 16, 17 potential games, what you're going to need to do to be able to have that success. Is that something that's kind of been brought up about how you're going to have to roll a lot of guys and you're going to need to be able to go out there and grind and prepare for that all off season?
Yeah, I think that's probably been the biggest point, especially in the O-line and D-line group, because we mainly work out together throughout the workout times that are separated. So every time we're in a workout, it's like one of the strength coaches are trying to like really hammer home the point that like it's gonna be on us. Like we go as far as the O-line will go and we go as far as the D-line will go. And that has to be exemplified in every rep and every workout that we do. So that's definitely like a biggest part of the summer.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to get more back with Mitchell, maybe dive into what he's doing this summer, maybe see part of the golf circuit, what's he watching on TV, who's the funniest dudes in the locker room. We'll get into all of that here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, welcome back in to the Bobby Carpenter Show. And we're still here with our guy, Mitchell Melton. And, you know, so we talk a little bit off season, what you're doing now, you know, we've had on Lathan and Denzel, Jack Sawyer, a lot of guys, offense, defense, talk about playing golf. You were shaking your head. Are you not part of the golf crew?
I'm aspiring to be a part of the golf club today. Still got some time, still definitely got some lessons I need to go through. But my roommate actually, Cody Simon, is definitely a part of the golf crew as well, and he tries to help me out as much as he can. But I've learned there's an art of finesse to the sport, and I just haven't cracked the code to that. But in due time, I'm still trying. I'm definitely still, you know, whenever Cody's going golfing, I'm asking to go with him and stuff. So we'll see.
Listen,
We'll see. TBD.
I've been golfing for a little while and I still haven't mastered the art of finesse yet. So, you know, I don't know
It
if
takes
it's
some
something that
time.
comes. it takes some time, no doubt. You know, one of the things about being in Columbus during the summer, it's a huge city, plenty of stuff to do. I know you guys like to hang out outside of the Woody. You know, what are some of the activities you're involved in? What are your favorite restaurants to go to in Columbus?
Um, there's a lot of good restaurants that I wasn't really privy to, but I definitely say my favorite, I guess my friend's favorite is probably Tupelo Honey. It's like near the Upper
Oh
Arlington
yeah.
area. And I've been there, I don't countless times. And I remember in the spring, we had a spring practice, took my parents there, and they had rave reviews as well. So they'll definitely be back. But yeah, I'd probably say my favorite is definitely Tupelo Honey for
Well, you
sure.
got to watch it. I mean, it's some of that good, the nice comfort food.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. You got to get a salad with everything else coming with it for sure.
well, hey, and
Comfort
don't
food's still
forget,
there.
weigh-ins on Monday, they count for triple.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
coming
I'm
off the
definitely watching the
weekend.
weight after I get back. I'm checking the scale to see if I'm good. But nah, I'll go anytime I can for sure.
So we had Cody on here too, and it's interesting. You grew up, you're outside of DC. You went to
Mhm.
high school there. Cody's a Jersey guy. Um, how did you guys, come to start rooming together, and what's he like? Because I know he's all buttoned up and all business and
Oh, yeah.
focused all the time. You seem a lot more laid back.
Yeah, I definitely call him RoboCop. One of the more regimented guys I've ever met in my life. But, it's more power to him, of course. But
Hey,
I
his dad
think
went to West Point, man.
yeah, I didn't know that, and he told me that like I think sophomore year, and I was like, I've never. It makes sense, because him and his mom, his dad and his mom are very, straight. Everything has to be done a certain way, and I respect that about them. But I think it was sophomore year of high school. I had a visit to Virginia Tech, and he did as well, and that's when we had like a dinner, and our mom just started talking, getting to know each other, and from there, like we kind of kept in touch a little bit, but then our freshman year, which was COVID, we had to figure out who our roommates wanted to be, and we both committed like near the same time. So he reached out, and we were like, "Yeah, we should be roommates." And then it was me, him, Cody, or Cam and Lathan, Cam Martinez and Lathan Ransom,
Yeah.
all in the Griff at once, and it was a great time. I love those guys, and it was a great time, definitely being in that apartment for sure.
I'm glad it worked out for you guys because it was a roll of the dice sometimes when you're trying to pick the
Oh,
roommates out.
for
But
sure.
it sounds like everybody's getting along there. You know, big news this summer. Everybody's been talking about it. I'm not much of a gamer myself, but the new
Oh yeah,
NCAA game is coming out. Do you
for
play?
sure.
Are you gonna play as yourself? Like, what's the deal there?
I don't know playing with myself. I probably got the worst rating on the D line, but nah, I'm definitely because I was a huge fan of the NCAA football games, like when it was 13 and 14 back in the day. Like that was my summer, was playing those games. So I definitely can't wait for the game to come out. And it's awesome to get a free copy of that. So I'm eagerly waiting for sure.
Okay, so some other things in the D line room. We've asked Jack this. I'm just kind of curious your opinion. You live with RoboCop and Corey. Who's the jokester in the D line room, or maybe the best on the team?
I think the D line's probably the funniest unit on the team. There's just so many guys that you would never expect to be hilarious. But I think the clear cut right now is probably Tyleek. He's probably one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life, and he will never fail to make you laugh. But I think a sleeper is JT. I think his comedic
Really?
timing is second to none. I got to be honest. So I think probably Tyleek or JT is definitely one of the funniest on the team.
All right, who talks the most trash on the defense?
Oh, IGB for sure. And
Yeah.
apparently, like his brother at Rutgers was doing the same thing. Like it was like a spitting image of just trash talk on the field, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, IGB is definitely the biggest trash talker.
It's you want to talk about another guy? Like he talks a lot of trash, but I don't know another guy, Mitch, who looks more serious all the time than
Mm.
IGB. Like that dude
Yeah,
walking around, no
it's a
smile ever.
no. It's a good day when he smiles because it's like you're surprised. Something must be going right if you get IGB to smile. But that guy's hilarious too. But it's just like when it's time to lock in, he's the one that's going to lock in the most for sure.
So also we talk a little bit of golf, aspiring golfer. It's the only sport that the harder you try, the worse you get. So it'll
Yeah.
come. But I mean, do we stream any shows? We a movie guy? Like what
Oh,
series
huge.
are we
Yeah.
in?
I'm a huge movie guy. Huge movie guy. I remember I started watching The Boys, which is maybe kind of crazy, but that's a great show right there.
Yeah.
Me and my dad are both huge movie guys. He really got me into it, but we went to go see Dune 2, I think
Nice.
3 times or something. But every time
Really?
he was locked into the TV, like the movie screen. Like I've never seen that man so locked in on anything in my life, but he was just like eyes glued to the screen. And that was a great movie. But yeah, me and my dad definitely like our way of spending time with each other is watching movies. So like, yeah, I love to see movies and stuff like that.
All right, so if you could only ever watch one movie ever
Mm.
again, it's the only thing you could watch. What
Ooh.
movie you picking?
Ah, that's torture. Probably Ocean's 11.
Wow.
Mm.
Old school.
Well, the one with Brad
Yeah.
Pitt and Yeah. That one.
Still,
That
that came out, Mitch. I mean, to me, that's old school because that was when I was like high school, college.
was
That's
before I
20
was
years
born,
ago.
but I still like
Yeah.
that trilogy is probably one of the best trilogies I've ever seen. Like those movies are just like the epitome of like suave and swag. It's just like every moment to see in a movie, I definitely have to watch that over and over again. So yeah.
Oh, absolutely tremendous. Well, Mitch, we appreciate it, man. I know you guys are busy. You're past the 4th of July, so you're allowed to get that pit in your stomach, knowing the training camp is around the corner. You're
Right
excited for the season, but basically the summer is over for you, and it's all ball now.
Yes, sir. But I'm excited for that too. You know, it's been a long time coming, and I'm ready to show the people what I got. So
Absolutely. Well, hey, stay healthy, keep grinding. We're excited to watch you, man. I've loved your journey, and I know you're going to do some big things on the edge this year. Coming up next, we're talking a little bit of revenue. Who's leading it for the athletic departments across the country? Well, there should be no surprise. We'll let you in on that here coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back into the program, and what a great job by Mitchell Melton. One of my favorites, great kid, young man now, been at Ohio State for a number of years, and his journey is pretty tremendous. So excited to see how he can help out this year, ultimately on that Buckeye defense. Looking forward, every year, Joshua, we always get this coming out here, the top schools in athletic revenue. And if I told you that 23 of the top 25 schools in athletic revenue were either in the Big Ten or SEC, would that even remotely surprise you?
Oh my gosh. Oh no, I'm shocked, right? Like, and this is what we all anticipated. We knew it was going this way. So no, I'm not shocked at all.
Do you care to take a guess at who the two schools not in the Big Ten or SEC are?
Oh God. You said top 25?
Yeah, in revenue.
Oh man. Clemson.
That's one.
Okay. And then give me a UNC.
UNC, same conference, but not UNC.
Okay. Then I'm gonna go Florida State.
Or boom, 2 out of 3.
Okay.
That ain't bad, man.
All
It
right.
took 3 guesses to get there. I think that's kind of indicative, Joshua, of where we're at now in college football. I told you that you had one, got the first one right, second one wrong, third one there. Like that's basically it.
I mean, it's the rich get richer, and the poor are kind of falling behind right now. And it's going to be interesting too, because I think that there's kind of this idea, and like I'm not trying to get philosophical here, but almost like a mirror of society where middle class in college football might disappear a little bit. Where Florida State and Clemson have been very vocal about wanting to make sure that they can stay relevant and competitive. They have championship aspirations, been exploring things even as far as private equity to get there. I've talked about the Big 12 and how I think they've done a good job of kind of defining their role in the grand scheme. And I don't think they're trying to be the Big 10 or the SEC. But the idea is that the gap could get wider to the point where, now we're playing in 2 completely different sports. I think they're different, but they're remotely similar. We could be looking at completely different things. Now, I think I saw the list on Twitter, and the thing that stood out to me the most is the idea that A&M is higher than Texas on this list.
Yeah.
And I know folks have talked about the Texas A&M rivalry that we're going to get to see in the fall and everything, but that is one that I'm keeping an eye on. A&M, and we've seen them spend the money, but bringing in more than Texas is impressive.
It is, and they're just a shade behind Ohio State. So Ohio State, not to bury the lead, Joshua, they're number 1 at $279.5 million. So I'm guessing within the next couple of years, they'll be the first to crack that $300 million budget number with what they're bringing in their yearly revenue, followed by Texas A&M, which is only, about $400,000 behind. Texas a little bit further down there. Michigan coming in at number 4, Georgia 5. What was surprising here at number 6, Joshua? Nebraska is 6th in revenue. And so you look at like A&M and you look at Nebraska, like Georgia, Michigan, Texas, Ohio State, you're like, okay, they're producing, you're getting something for those dollars. I feel like Nebraska is kind of in that boat, like with A&M, where you feel like there should be more production given the revenue that's being brought in.
But even A&M, like huge school in the state of Texas, like you could talk me into now. Number 2 is crazy. You could talk me into them being really high up on this list. Nebraska, and I've been there for game day. The fans always show up. They've got a sellout streak that's ridiculous. People are engaged with that athletic department. It's not just football. They support, volleyball. They support everything that's going on out there. But number 6 on the list. I mean, we got to take it back to 94, 95 and see if they can't make a run at things.
Yeah, they have all the resources and the tools. The problem is with Nebraska, it's just they're a destination program. They're in isolation. You have to be able to recruit to it. And that's, I think, the thing that is hard at this point. And maybe NIL, like, if you have a fan base that's engaged like that and you're able to drive that kind of revenue, you should be able to compete more on an NIL stage than perhaps, schools that maybe have richer talent bases around them, but they don't necessarily have the resources.
The issue real quick on that though is like, they have the routes. If you fly into Chicago, you can get to Lincoln, right? And that's a quick flight. But if you can't do that, you got to go to Omaha and then you got to drive an hour and 15 minutes. Like that is just not something that I think you can talk a lot of guys into doing.
Yeah. And when they were rolling, Tom Osborne, they were able to go into California. They got a lot of guys from Southern California. He would get some guys, get a lot of guys out of Texas. They'd go up there. And they were able to have a lot of success recruiting and bringing those dudes in. So that was a big deal. Penn State, we mentioned James Franklin earlier off the top there. Penn State coming in with $202 million in revenue. At number 7, Tennessee at 8, LSU 9, Bama 10. And interestingly enough, Oklahoma was 11, but Wisconsin was 12. And I thought that was interesting because they've been pretty good. Now with Fick there, we'll see if they can turn this thing and get back to where they were winning 9, 10, 11 games on a yearly basis. But, people kind of talk about them being underfunded, but they're sitting there just a shade under $200 million in yearly revenue.
And Wisconsin's got a similar thing to Nebraska too, in terms of the athletic department support. First off, their alums they're real proud people, and they like to show that. So I'm not necessarily shocked. Also, what else is going on in Wisconsin? And I'm not saying that to throw shade, but like that's where the attention is in terms of collegiate athletics. I can see it.
Well, they've got the Milwaukee Bucks, Joshua. They've got the Green Bay Packers. You've got the Brewers. I mean, you do have some professional sports teams in the Bucks.
But if you're a Midwesterner, you like your college sports too.
You do. We'll hold off on the tickets and get to this because there's a heavy correlation here when you just talk about pure ticket revenue of where these schools are. And so that's going to be a combination of obviously how big your stadium is, how many people choose to go to your games, and then what you're charging for tickets. So we'll talk a little bit about that in our tailgate talk coming up. And we got some great questions from our listeners here as well. So we'll get into all that here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, welcome back into the program. Now we got some tailgate talk. Tailgate talk is brought to you by our friends at Garage Beer. Garage Beer is the perfect beer for you all summer long and all summer get-togethers. Cookout, Garage Beer, family reunion, Garage Beer, doing yard work like I was yesterday. How about some Garage Beer? So go buy some Garage Beer. It's beer-flavored beer, and it's just what you need. All right, Joshua. I said I was going to make sure we got the revenue from season tickets in here for ticket sales via public schools from the 2023 season. Coming in $64+ million. Number one on total athletic department revenue. We've got Ohio State. $55+ million, Michigan and Texas. $40+ million. We've got Penn State, A&M, OU, and LSU. And then in the 30+ realm, Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, Nebraska, and Florida. Surprising Nebraska was that low because they sell out that ginormous stadium every week. Maybe it's tickets are a little cheaper. I know at the Buckeyes, like it's a big stadium and it's not exactly cheap to get into. So they must be doing something right.
Yeah, I know at Nebraska too, the athletic department will do partnerships to sell tickets to give out to certain groups so they can keep the sellout streak there. So I think that's an explainer. The 64 million is a ridiculous number, especially when you start to think about the gaps that exist on this list. It's, about 9 million between the second tier and then another 15 between the third and the second. printing money, man. They got a way of getting people in the seats.
Well, you got to think. I mean, there's 8 games every other year now. 7.5. They used to almost always have 8 home games, but 100,000 people on average, $80 a ticket. Like, all right, $8 million times that by 8, 64 million. Like, it always seems to be full, and they always seem to do a great job. Some questions here coming at you. And it's fun. Which player position group are you most excited to watch this year? And I'm going to kind of pair this in the question from John K. He said everyone's talking offense and a little bit of D line. Question is, how far will they go with the no-fly defense? And I think this secondary, number one, I think the D line is going to be great. And I'm really excited. We had Mitchell Melton on, guy who's been hurt a lot, very athletic, and I think will translate really well to the next level. So I'm excited for him to have a big year, despite the fact that they've got really good defensive ends around him. But Joshua, I think this secondary, and part of it's because the D line is going to be really good and they'll provide a lot of pressure. But I think there's about 8 to 10 guys that they can play in this secondary and have a like top level caliber pass defense, like best in America, hands down. And I don't know when the last time I've been able to say that they have all these corners, safeties, inside, outside, that are all high level competitors that can go get after it.
Yeah, it was interesting when I was at Ohio State. We had Eli Apple was a first-round pick, and Garyon Conley was a first-round pick. Von Bell was a second-rounder, and then Tyvis Powell, who was back there as an undrafted free agent, but all guys who ended up on NFL rosters. Then you start to look, okay, who's the second-tier guys? And like Marshawn Lattimore was still a little bit of a ways away. It's like we didn't
Marshawn had to have like 2 hamstring reconstructions.
Dude, he had hamstring transplants. Like it was crazy. But the idea that we had top flight guys was always the case. But like if we would have had some injury issues, it would have been a little bit of like a question mark. We might have been holding our breath on, okay, what are we going to do to make this secondary work? And that's the one group on this team that I'm looking at this current year where I'm saying, okay, if like a guy goes down, certainly you don't want that to happen, but you think they're going to be in a good spot. So I don't think they're very far away from being one of the best secondaries if they're not the best secondary this year. Now, the group that I'm looking at is the offensive line. I'm going to keep hammering that because I think, as Mitchell said, this team goes as far as they go. Josh Simmons, to me, is a guy who I feel like is flying under the radar. He consistently got better as the year went on. Like he wasn't a guy where you're looking and saying, "Ah, man, we gotta figure this thing out." Like transfers in, that's a tough deal playing on the offensive line. Played solid football, and I think he's got the athletic tools to take a big step this year.
Well, he has athletic tools. He has first round ability. Like he is a guy that moves. He's got elite strength. He just, when you're coming from like, where's he, San Diego State, like there's a jump, and it's not just a talent jump. It's a psychological jump, Josh, from going from a program like that to being thrown into like the Marathi, Ohio State, O-line, D-line blender. Cause that you've been there. And if it might as well have just been coming from high school for him to kind of develop that mentality.
I mean, you talk to any coach in America and they'll tell you the biggest difference between like, a top flight P5 school to, a bottom tier, I guess, power 4 school to a group of 5 school is the trenches. Like that is where the biggest difference happens. So you're totally right. It takes some time to adjust, but even with the adjustment, I thought he was solid last year and he's got a lot of room to get better.
Oh, he's going to be very, very talented. Very excited for him. And one other guy I'm going to try to maybe get him on here before we get going with training camp is Jordan Hancock, because when you have a inside corner that is physical, that can also play outside corner, can play safety, I can do all these things. That's a Swiss Army knife. Like those guys are invaluable, and they maybe don't get the hype of the guys on the outside. And we're talking about IGB, you're talking about Jermaine Matthews, Denzel Burke, like all these great players, but he's a guy that's really, really good. So, and one of my favorites, and has done it the right way. So we're going to wrap up the program. We got some big recruiting news from the position group that, well, Josh and I were a part of at Ohio State. Find out next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back into the program. Final segment here, and big news for the Ohio State linebacker recruiting room. And Joshua, we talked about it. James Laurinaitis, he was a graduate assistant, but basically running the room. The one thing you can't do as a GA is you can't get out on the road and recruit. You coach the guys up there, but you couldn't go out and bring in this top flight talent. James Laurinaitis now being officially the linebacker coach, the recruiting has paid off and paid off in a big way. People were worried, well, does he want to? There's an inexperience level to exactly some of the things that I heard. And he just landed Riley Pettijohn, talented linebacker, top 5 guy. He is now the second, Joshua, top 5 linebacker that James Laurinaitis has landed in this recruiting class. So you know what? I think those questions have been answered.
It's so interesting to me. Like, I know recruiting's difficult, and there's a lot of relationship building that goes into it. For those who don't know James Laurinaitis like you and I do, he can do the relationship aspect of it extremely well. He's a guy that I'm fortunate that I can call a friend, but he's really good at that part. The other thing is, when you're James Laurinaitis, you'd be like, "Hey, man, I'm 3-time All-American. I won every damn award. I went to the NFL. I'm a franchise leader in tackles. Like, I can teach you." And guess what? I wasn't a 5-star. I was not a 5-star. I had to be a student of the game. I had to be on my craft. I can teach you the ways. And I think it's a really powerful recruiting pitch. You come here to the place that I love, where I played. I can teach you some of the things that I learned, and I can show you the way to be a great linebacker because I was one right here and also in the league. And I'm just not shocked that he's able to communicate that to young people who want to be great.
It's amazing. Like when you're walking down the hall and you're like, oh, these are our major award winners. And you show them and, oh yeah, that's me right there with the Buckus. And oh yeah, the Lombardi, that's AJ Hawk, who was actually a senior my freshman year. Like you either played with or you have them all. And then all of the first team All-Americans have their pictures up in all of the rooms, except for James, because he goes, I'm not looking at a picture of myself all the time as I come in. And I go, I respect that. And they're like, but the recruits love it. He's like, the recruits know. He's like, I don't have to, I mean, you don't have to be ridiculous about it. But that's when people said, like, you know, could he recruit? Could he do this? Like, dude, he has everything that you could ever want. The guy played in the NFL at a high level. He's a great communicator, great person. He's a great instructor, which is
He
what
is.
he's getting a lot of that Brian Hartline treatment where I think people are like, hey, I can go to Ohio State. It's a great school. And if I want to be coached by the best for a guy who wants to invest in me, this is how I've got to get it done.
You think he ever walks through Buckeye Grove and just like stops by his tree with a recruit, you know, just to like drive the point home? Like he's taking this long meandering walk through campus, and then of course, like the climax of the conversation comes right there in front of the tree.
You know what? It might. I could see James maybe doing that, or maybe I could see him more being subtle and being stopping, like, hey, you know, one of my favorite things to do after a game, because you know James is a big family guy.
Yep.
And they're actually, James showed they're expecting their 4th here later this month. So I told James, you're a brave dude. You're doing it right in the throngs of football season there. But like, it's cool to be able to take your kids and see that stuff. And I know,
Yeah.
like, you know AJ, you know, pretty well. Like that could care less about that stuff. And really, James could too. But like to take his kids to go see his tree in Buckeye Grove, they love it. I like my kids to go see all the guys who I played with, whether it's
Yeah.
James and Malcolm and Troy, and like walking them through the Woody. Like, you know, that's our Big Ten championship. That's my senior year. That was my freshman year. That's Troy Smith's Heisman Trophy. You know, it's the picture we got signed. Like having those moments, I think that can resonate with recruits and their families probably as much as anything.
Yeah, I mean, the thing you're talking about is it's a lifelong deal being at Ohio State. It's transformational and it's generational, runs deep. So I think communicating that, and he can do it as well as anybody, you know, him and Hartline on what it means to be a Buckeye.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you guys coming on with us today. We have another big show next week. Until then, stay tuned and locked in right here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.